it's Ari. We're just wrapping up a day at the ACM trade show, and what a day it has been. Stay with us. We've got 2 different highlight episodes talking to people about the show, why they're here, what their businesses are doing, and why it's so important to be engaged in Aerospace Alley. Enjoy the episodes. Just a quick reminder for you to like, subscribe, and rate this podcast so we can get your feedback and know how to make it better. Back at the ACM trade show with Chris Kielb. Chris, thanks so much for coming on today, man. Really appreciate it.
A pleasure being here, and thank you for the honor of sitting here with me.
Well, you're very, very welcome. Hey, man, it's awesome having you at the ACM trade show. Not your first show, though.
No, we've been doing this as long as we've been ACM members.
How long's that been?
Probably right around 10 years or so. Yeah,
there you go. Long decade. Organization has grown quite a bit over those last 10 years, as I think has the show, right?
It has, yeah, both actually. We used to be in a much smaller venue than this, and I think probably 4 or 5 years ago, I think we were down a level. Yes. We came up to the big room, the big boys room upstairs. Yeah.
I was going to say, I think we're almost at like 125 exhibitors this year. It's huge.
Yeah. It's a very strong organization. Jess has been doing a great job with it, and promoting it, growing it, and making it a good event for everybody, and something that everybody can walk away with something to gain. Yeah, so just thinking about, before we talk about the show, let's talk a little about ACM membership in general. You've been a member for a decade. What is the reason, Chris, that you feel like it's worth your time to invest in participating with what ACM has to offer? Aerospace Alley. Call it one word, 2 words. That's what it is. I mean, being in Springfield, Massachusetts, when we heard of the ACM, it was something we had to get involved with. And because I know there are a lot of large aerospace companies down in this area, I spoke with my business partner, my sister Melinda, and okay, let's go investigate. We were invited to sit in on a meeting. Back then it was Al Samuel running the show, and a great guy, still big supporter of ours, and we support him as well. Sat at his table for lunch today. And we got our foot in the door when they did open it up to Massachusetts companies to become members. And ever since then, it's just been getting more and more involved and more active. Recently 2 years ago, I believe now, I've been on the board of directors for the ACM as well.
So when you think about the places you got to spend your time, and for other people that are listening, companies that have been thinking about participating in ACM but haven't pulled the trigger, maybe sometimes just can't get outside of their own 4 walls to see what's out there. I mean, you guys aren't a huge business. Your time is as limited as anybody else's, but yet you've decided to commit your time to participate with this group, not just as a member, not just coming to the events, but even on the board. What is it about the ACM that's kind of driven you to make that decision to commit your time?
Growth. It's growth for me personally, professionally, the company as well. Growth, exposure, getting our company name out there. I think we've got the brightest booth out there right now, so everybody has to get some cheap sunglasses to walk by our booth. But just to be in a room like this with the largest aerospace and defense contractors in Connecticut or New England, this is where everybody is today. And if they're not, it's a place they should be, because again, we can build anything that flies or anything that you need to manufacture out of metal. We can do it as ACM members.
Yeah, that's really terrific. And I mean, it really speaks, I think, volumes that every year we have really, really impressive speakers, whether it's from Pratt & Whitney, Raytheon, Sikorsky, the governor. I mean, there's just a ton of support for what ACM is doing. It just seems like a lot of engagement at all levels, which I think speaks to what you're talking about from an exposure standpoint.
Absolutely. Yep. And that's why we spend the time. I mean, we had 4 employees here this morning, and then we have 3 of us here right now. And it's not just people like myself working the booth with my sales engineer. We have a volunteer, manning the front booth, or the front entrance, basically. So we just have to be here to support Jess, support the cause. So time well spent. Yeah, no doubt about it. So let's talk a little bit about the trade show itself. So trade show is really in 2 different parts, right? Kind of the morning's really more about long-term career development. And then the afternoon's more about sort of networking, getting to talk to customers and suppliers and see what's going on. Is that how you'd break it up? Exactly. That's exactly the format of it. And in the morning, again, we had 4 people here this morning. Some of our younger people, they communicate better with the younger folks that were here this morning because they're more on their level. And then in the afternoon, my sales engineer, John Marshall, and I run the booth. And even though we know everybody in the room, it's good just to touch base with everybody. Hey, did you get that quote I sent to you the other day? And where do we stand? Where's the job? And then always a good opportunity to meet new people. There's some big, tier one people here that we don't do work for directly, and it's a good opportunity to reach out to those people face to face and have a conversation with them. Make sure they know who we are.
Yeah, listen. I mean, in the event, I don't know if you knew this or not. I just been sort of discovered to me this year. There's people coming in from aerospace companies out of state who are just flying in. Ran into two different people in the elevator coming in from faraway states to just come and be at this trade show. It's kind of amazing.
It absolutely is. Yeah. I mean, again, Aerospace Alley. I mean,
Yep.
we kind of compete with the guys up in the northwest corner of the country, but right here in Little Connecticut, it's a great thing that we have in our backyard. Obviously, it's something we have to support, nurture, and help it grow, like the governor said earlier today.
Yeah, man, no doubt about it. So let's spend a little time talking about what's maybe even nearer and dear to your heart, although I know ACM is near and dear, is Advance Welding. So talk a little bit about, Advance Welding, what you guys do, where you're located.
Sure, absolutely. And again, thank you for the opportunity. It's great to be on this forum. Advanced Welding, 45-year-old company. My parents, mom and dad, Kaz and Carol Kielb, they started in 1978. Back then, I was still an employee at 9 years old, making $1 an hour. It's what I did on the weekends, and I learned through, just being under my dad's or on his coattails all the way, from building things at home. We're gearheads. We build everything from motorcycles and go-karts and race cars and things like that. And so that's what got my interest back when I was a kid. And we've just, thanks to my parents, we've grown the company over the last 45 years considerably. And actually today is our 2-year anniversary that we acquired an electron beam and laser beam welding company. That acquisition was of the company KTI in East Windsor, Connecticut. And since then, we moved all the operations from Connecticut to Springfield, and it's been a great addition to our company. I say we're probably the most comprehensive fusion welding company. I say in New England, I say to the Northeast, probably the world, because for everything that we do in our company, again, we do electron beam welding, laser beam welding, gas tungsten arc welding, and we do that manually, robotically, orbital tube welding. We do torch brazing, induction brazing, and resistance welding. So to have all those credentials, and we're NADCAP accredited for all of the above, it's a 5-day audit when NADCAP comes to town every 2 years, and it's a time of stress, but you take that credential away, and you can cut our business not in half. You can cut it probably by 80% because we're so heavily into aerospace and defense. And it's like we've got great people, great folks on the shop floor, great people in the office, engineers, quality. Everybody really comes together, and it's been a really great experience bringing the KTI folks for EB and laser into our shop. And we've got a really strong company right now. We're at 24 people, and which for me, 2 years ago we had 12 people. Now we've got 24 people, so things have changed fast. And which is great. I mean, it's something it's exciting for me. It's challenging for me. It's got its ups and downs, of course, but it's been a great move in the right direction.
Yeah, man, that's terrific. So when you guys are doing all this welding, who are your what are the key kind of projects that you're working on? Who are the key customers you're serving?
Biggest customers right now, indirectly Electric Boat. They are probably the biggest. Collins Aerospace, Raytheon. Lockheed, as we heard them talk this morning or earlier for lunch, Sikorsky, the primes, and that's always been my job. Since I came out of college, it was always my goal was to create a company where a prime has no reason not to come to us. That was back in the mid to late 90s when ISO was just getting its footing, its teeth, yeah. And so I go, okay, well, meeting with mom and dad, like, okay, there's this thing called ISO 9000. Well, what's that? Like, okay, well, you're the one that went to school. You're the one that got your MBA. We'll figure it out. So it was late 90s, I believe, is when we started getting our feet wet with ISO 9000, with NADCAP. My dad always wanted to be an FAA repair station. So all the things that he wanted to do, but really didn't have the means to do it. My sister and I kind of worked together, and we got all that stuff done. So name something. It's like the latest thing is CMMC. Like, okay, we're in the process of doing CMMC right now. We are an FAA repair station, NADCAP accredited, of course, ISO 9000 or 9100. So anything that comes out there, ITAR, register for this, register for that, just keep on doing it. They're all barriers to entry. And I welcome them because it's going to minimize my competition.
Sure.
And it's something that we have the resources to go ahead, and we know the way to either get funding through state grants, workforce training funds. We heavily utilize those in the state of Massachusetts, and it helps us along the way. And it's, again, we're no longer a 6-person mom and pop shop, welding shop. We are a 24-person strong manufacturing facility, because we don't just do welding. We'll do complete scale projects.
Damn, it's a lot of change you guys are driving. You mentioned something you guys are doing a lot for electric boat as well as for a lot of the aerospace companies. Has that been a challenge? I mean, sometimes I talk to folks like, the submarines. It's you may think it's similar, certainly defense, certainly like precision, but a little bit of a different flavor. How have you found the ability to kind of make that pivot?
Ironically, we are not an approved vendor for electric boat, but they're our biggest customer.
No kidding.
Just because we do work indirectly for them, second, third tier, or first and second tier primarily. It's all good work. We have procedures in place with electric boat, and it's, again, we're just making things out of metals.
Right.
So, and some of the stuff that we do for them, it's complete, stem to stern, where we're procuring the material, we're processing the material, we're cutting it, we're machining it, we're welding it, we're finishing it, we're inspecting it, we're heat treating it, and we're shipping it to the customer as a final product. So working with EB is fine, because I don't work with them directly.
Right.
So that's fine.
And from a technical perspective, has there been a big challenge in sort of understanding the difference between sort of submarine welds and what you need to do there versus sort of the aerospace side of the house?
We refer to that as NAVC type welding.
Yep.
And it's, the welding credentials are, I would say, more specific compared to the aerospace world. Aerospace world, we have AWSD 17.1. That's kind of like the bread and butter of the welding specifications for aerospace and defense. Electric boat or anything that's going to be on the water, they go to a NAVC specification, and the specifications are dependent greatly on material type, material thickness, filler wire requirements, so on and so forth, and it's all very unique.
Right.
And pretty much every time I get a request for quote across my desk, I have to look at all these credentials. Actually, Melinda has to look at all these credentials. She's the one who knows those specs inside and out, and it's like reading Greek sometimes, because it's like, what am I reading here? It doesn't make sense. Are we qualified or are we not qualified? So we have resources. If it's something we don't know or we can't decipher from the spec, we've got people in our back pocket. We can make a phone call, send an email, and we can talk to people outside that can help us interpret these things. So it is very specific, and unfortunately sometimes a machine shop will come to us and say, hey, here, stick these two pieces of metal together. We can do that, but it's like, I don't have a qualification for this, but we can do it.
Right.
It's a $5,000 added expense just for NRE to get qualified.
Right.
And the job might be a $2,000 job. And so it's very specific. We've got a lot of these random, off the cuff specs that we're qualified for, but it's just more feathers in our cap. And the more we have, the better off we are. Yeah,
fair enough. So just before we wrap up, Chris, thinking about this morning and the trade and the career show and like getting people to work in the organization, you're kind of, you need, speaking of Connecticut or Aerospace Alley punching above its weight, and they were talking about it this morning about sort of like how well we do number one per capita in defense spending and all this other great stuff. How do you guys think about punching above your weight to recruit for talent in the welding? Because I know the war for talent in welding is fierce. A lot of people want great welders. Obviously, you've got some. How do you guys think about winning in that battle and getting the people you need to grow the business?
By putting myself out there. It's not a 9-to-5 job for me by any means. I'm out in society. I sit on multiple board of advisors for Chicopee Comprehensive High School, Putnam High School, Lincoln Tech down here in Connecticut, as Nuntuck. I'm involved with all these trade schools, as well as recently Western New England University. I built quite a strong relationship with them because we're getting more involved with the engineering side of things. And right now we're constantly supporting them. They support us with employees. We're doing internships. We have just hired an intern from Western New England University, a very smart senior who's going to spend some time with us. And it's great to see that these young people do want to get their hands dirty, and they are smart. And so I can take things off my plate, give it to them, and they can do it. So the trade schools, it's always been a battle because ever since I was a kid, I just grew up around this. I don't mind getting my hands dirty. It's a problem now with me not getting my hands dirty and concentrating on growing the business.
You got to work on the business, not in the business.
Exactly. But there are young people out there, men and women, boys and girls, and the biggest problem is getting exposure for them, because if they don't know about manufacturing, they don't know what's going on in this room. If their parents don't know about it, their guidance counselors don't know about it, then they don't know what's going to happen. And I've done research projects on this in the past. I've worked with the University of Massachusetts. They did a project for me several years ago, and there's actually a disincentive for guidance counselors to push students in the direction of the trades. Why? How many people can you put in the welding department in your high school? A dozen, maybe? If you have something that is more college-oriented, well, then you could put 2 or 3x that in that same classroom, not to mention the cost to create a classroom for welding or machining or automotive or anything else like that. If you just have people looking in a book, it's much cheaper. And it's really unfortunate. So back when I was in junior high and high school, we had all the trades. I mean, I remember being able to weld better than my high school, shop teacher, and doing all that stuff. Unfortunately, now they don't have that. But places like Putnam, places like Chicopee Comp, they built brand new schools over the last 5 to 10 years or so ago, and they're great. I mean, they're like my dream facilities. We have quite a nice shop in Springfield, but I look at these schools and the equipment they have and the facilities they have, they're state of the art. So it is coming back. We just have to create more awareness. I think that's what we would say, more awareness for young people to know that you can do very well in manufacturing. You might get your hands dirty, but the environment is the environment we're sitting in right now, in my shop at least.
Yeah.
And make money. I mean, we had a very good success story of a young guy, 2 or 3 years out of high school, owned his own 2-family home, had a relatively new vehicle. He's a landlord, and he's making good bucks at a great facility, a career. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, listen, I really appreciate all that. I'm going to throw in a quick plug for S. Nuntuck. They've done a great job, I think, to your point, building out a really state-of-the-art sort of manufacturing facility that's got so much great stuff there to really augment what you were talking about sort of at Chicopee and other schools in your area. And I love that Nuntuck out in Enfield sort of really supports your area, sort of like the, Western Massachusetts, Springfield area, as well as like, Northern Connecticut and beyond. So really important to have employers like you partnering with the schools and driving it and helping to raise that awareness. So appreciate you doing that, Chris. And thanks for coming on today.
All right, well, thank you for having me. Pleasure. Thank you.
Coming back to the ACM Trade Show with Amy Thompson, Chief Training Officer at CCAT. Thanks for talking to us today, Amy.
Great. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, very excited to have you. Well, ACM Trade Show, is this your first time at the trade show?
I've been here once before. It's been a few years, but it's always exciting to come back. And now, here in my role at CCAT, the Connecticut Center for Advanced Technology, a lot of our vendors and partners are here. Yeah. So it's really exciting to see their booths. And it's also really great. This morning, the younger kids are here. The students are here, and it's really great to see what are they being attracted to, what's really getting their attention from some of the booths that are here. And right. So I noticed one of our partners, Spherogen, is over there, and they do this great augmented reality, virtual reality, and of course all the students are just crowded around there. They love this stuff, so it's really fun to see what they're getting excited about this morning.
Yeah, that is cool. Love the fact that we're able to get the young people in here. You said this isn't your first time here, but I know it must be your first time with CCAT because you only been at CCAT for 2 months.
Yes.
What were you here, in what capacity were you at the ACM Trade Show previously?
So prior to joining CCAT, I was as a professor of systems engineering at University of Connecticut for about 6 years. And prior to that, I was 6 years at University of New Haven. And so I was here as a university professor, kind of walking around. I taught industrial engineering, manufacturing engineering, systems engineering. So I was really here to learn more about the small, medium-sized manufacturers in Connecticut, get a chance maybe to connect with them to, either work on projects, collaborative projects together, or even, recruit employees into our training programs, either at the grad or undergraduate level.
Oh, nice. So you've been sort of in training education for a long time.
For a while, yes.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so listen, let's talk a little bit about what you're doing over at CCAT. So maybe first, it's funny, Amy, I feel like everyone should know CCAT. We've been really honored to have different people from CCAT over the last 4.5 years on the show. But it does occur to me that not everyone knows what CCAT is. So you did say it was the Connecticut Center for Advanced Technology. But could you just educate for anyone that doesn't know, what is CCAT?
Right. So, to me, and I can say this being a new person, I think the organization is really important to Connecticut. One of a few of the main things it does is it helps to small and medium-sized manufacturers. It helps to move advanced technology to their floors, into their organizations faster, right? And so it kind of de-risks that technology for them. And so a few things that we do to do that is we're kind of a proving ground, right? So we're able to go to small, medium-sized manufacturers, and maybe they're interested in trying to rapid prototype something that they used to machine, but they don't want to take this huge investment of putting the machine in and training their folks when they don't know what the outcome is or if they're going to have a good outcome. So we're able to kind of be a field testing for that,
Got it.
right? Get them comfortable with the technology and that it will actually solve their problems before they bring that in-house and make investments in equipment. And then, the other important thing that we do is it's not just capital investment that's a barrier to adoption of technology, is you actually need the workforce with the skills to support that technology. So the other really important thing we do at CCAT is offer training, education programs, teaching the skills that the employees at these companies need. So when the equipment goes on the floor, it's not just, okay, we know that the equipment can do and is capable of this, but the workforce is actually ready for it, right? They know how to do, how to interact with the technology and use the technology to actually get the same outcome or a good outcome like we got in the lab, right?
Oh yeah, listen. So just to sort of sum it up, right? Opportunity to de-risk the investment in technology,
Yes.
leveraging the tools, the hardware, the floor space, and the expertise CCAT has, both to understand if the technology will work and how it would work and what the outcome would be, and on top of that, then training people in your organization on how to then operate that technology, presuming that it actually works, to then have someone going there so that your team knows how to operate and get the outcomes you got in the lab. So kind of holistically helping bring modern manufacturing technology to small and mid-sized businesses. Is that about right?
That's right. And, we also do some training for the supervision and the management because it involves them sometimes changing their processes and a little bit of their organization and their IT systems and things like that that actually support this new technology coming in. So we do a little bit of that as well, because you can't just plop the thing in there into a person. If you think about it, you've also got the process and the infrastructure at the company. So we do training and education on how to deal with actual implementation issues that come up when you try to implement.
Wow,
this in
really
the
like
company.
soup to nuts technology
Yes.
adoptions.
Yeah,
Really,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
great. So as the chief training officer, let's just sort of start off. It's a new role,
It is.
or new to CCAT, or
It's
new
new
to
to
you?
CCAT, yes.
So what was going on at CCAT where they felt like, hey, we need to have a chief training officer?
Right. So I think previously, with a lot of our programs, they were mostly state funded or federal funding going to state funding, and then we were able to offer these programs for low or no cost, which small and medium manufacturers need. They don't have the resources that sometimes the larger companies have. But recently, we've been getting more federal funding, large federal funding, and we're actually beginning to hire our own internal trainers. So previously, we used to work with our consultants and contractors, and they would all do the training. We would contract the training.
Subbed it all out.
Right, but now that our programs are growing and getting larger, we really need to be able to do a mix of that. It's not like we're not going to stop getting training from our contractors and our vendors. We do, but we want to marry that with our own, put in the knowledge that we've learned from using these technologies to kind of proof the concepts and have our own education and training programs. So when that happens, you kind of want someone who has a more, education and, how do you design education programs? How do you do a mix of what should we be teaching? What should the vendors be teaching? What should consultants be helping us teach? So it's a mix of that. So you kind of, it gets more to program design, education design, and that we're doing this in an effective way, that we're partnering smartly and, kind of collaboratively working together, and that we're all contributing, our best, what we do and know best to that education and training. We have some larger programs now federally funded that are multi-million dollars. And so now we're investing, more significant money and funding into training. And so we want to make sure that they're well designed. And so I think me coming in there with an engineering degree and also experience in education and training at universities, that helps in designing programs and curriculum.
Yeah. We'll get to that in a second. And your
Okay.
background almost seems like uniquely qualified or uniquely sort of specialized for what CCAT needs, right? You sort of have the manufacturing, background and understanding and process engineering and all that, and experience doing teaching, which just seems like a natural sort of fit for the role at CCAT.
Yeah.
What are some of the programs you mentioned? Sort of some larger federal programs that are sort of necessitating this. what are some of those programs doing? And for businesses that are listening, what should they be excited about with these new programs?
Right. So I think, maybe one of the programs I'll focus on today is our new digital thread laboratory, which will open in January. And that occurred due to some significant funding from the Department of Defense. And so for 18 months, we'll be teaching digital thread principles. And, this is spurned from this larger movement of digital transformation, right, at a lot of our engineering and manufacturing companies. And really, that's what it's about. The simple explanation of that is we're all moving from paper
Yep.
to a digital world, and it seems so easy, right? It's like, oh, you just put in all these IT systems and everything becomes digital, but it really transforms and changes the way everybody does their job. From management to engineers and technicians to folks on the floor in the manufacturing floor. Think about no paper, and we use paper we use it for training, for doing procedures, for documenting verification, validation that our products are good, quality inspection. And so to take all of that digital, we're really reskilling everybody. And again, sometimes the OEMs and the larger companies have resources to help them make that transformation. But the small, medium size and the different tiers, especially in the Department of Defense, may not have those resources. And it actually becomes a problem for the bigger companies because as they begin to digitally transform, if their supply chain isn't able to keep up and transform with them, they hit a roadblock, right? So why it's important that we have that digital lab is we're really training digital thread, digital engineering, digital manufacturing skills to small and medium-sized manufacturers so that these suppliers can kind of be in a level playing field with the larger companies. And, the other things that are happening is these larger companies, when they go digital, they're going to be sending out digital packages, data packages to the companies. There's no, paper written contracts and requirements. And so how are these folks going to receive that information, right? From costing to design to manufacturing to quality inspection to feedback, validating that the parts are good. This is all going to be digital. And so really what we're teaching is that move. Like, what are the software? What's the software that's going to help you enable this? Training in that software. What are some of these other issues, like how do we keep this in our IT systems, data storage, cybersecurity, all of those things that now that everything's going digital.
Yeah, so just taking one little small step back, and I think you I certainly followed it, but I already know what I also know what it is. Like, for people that are listening and go, like, digital what? What is the concept of digital thread and this whole idea of digitization? Like, what is it and why are companies doing it?
Yes, so I think that, when you go from the paper to the digital world, you're able to capture more information, and it kind of keeps everything consistent. And it comes back to this kind of another catchphrase, like this idea of a single source of truth. And really what it means is that you don't have different variations of what's true and what's current at every stage of the development process, right? It's like this thread is this single source of truth that goes through, and everybody's adding to it, modifying it, but it's all current. It's all the current state of what this design is or what this thing is that's being manufactured, and it's consistent all the way through. So you don't have different versions. Somebody else, the people on the manufacturing floor, are building something to a wrong spec that's not the right spec. It's been changed 3 days ago, and everybody can see like the real world implications of this, but it's a constant thread. And to be honest, when this concept, again, it seems easy, but to actually get all of these different software tools and all of these different systems to work together, to take the data package from the previous step and that it's able to be used by the next step, by that machine to that machine to that machine, a lot of these machines weren't working well together. And so when people tried to implement it, none of this actually worked. And so, CCAT was actually worked with some of the OEMs in Connecticut, like Pratt & Whitney and other folks, to say, let's do a test of this. Let's see if this thread is actually working, and it wasn't. So we helped to get the software vendors involved, to fix some of the issues, come up with best practices and standards, so we actually have a consistent thread. So, when the thread breaks, that's bad, because when that, at any part, any place in this process, when that thread breaks, that design document is no longer current. Like, if it doesn't work in my machine, then I'm rewriting this, I'm redoing it, that thread's broken, and who knows if what I created is right. Yeah. So you want it to kind of be consistent, and the information's actually transferring from one step to the other.
Yeah, listen, it sounds like so powerful if we can get it all there, and I think it's really important. if small, medium-sized businesses want to continue to thrive in the supply chain, they're going to have to be able to kind of grab onto this, just like we've had to grab onto who knows how many other things, over the years. So when you think about implementing sort of this new digital thread training and getting that going, how do you foresee that working? Companies that are listening or that are interested, how would they take advantage of it?
Right. So the good news for small, medium-sized manufacturers in Connecticut, and we're actually serving the whole region,
Okay.
from New York and Pennsylvania up to Maine. Obviously focusing on Connecticut as we launch in January. We'll launch the schedule for training in November, mid to late November. So anybody can actually go to our CCAT website, to the Digital Thread Lab, create a user profile, and you'll be able to go in and navigate the different types of training that we're offering. And so I think in November, you'll actually see the first quarter, the first 3 months of training sessions that are available, and folks can go in and train. The good news is with the Department of Defense sponsoring this, there's only just a small registration fee. It's like $50 to take a course that might cost you $1,000 or $2,000 to take from, a service provider. So it's really a great way for small, medium-sized manufacturers to get their employees this training with low cost and with trainers that, that have been in this whole process for several years working on this problem with great expertise. So it's a great opportunity for them. So the other thing that's going to be helpful on the website is we actually define some career pathways, right? So whether you're in design or you're in manufacturing or you're in quality or different areas of the company, you'll be able to say, oh, here's my career path. You'll be able to assess where your skills are so far and figure out, okay, this is where I'm going to pick up, and these are the classes I need to kind of move forward. And so, that as a chief training officer, that was the other thing I kind of contributed value to is, how do we define these pathways so that we kind of get people in at the right place and they know where they're going and why.
That's awesome. And then from a perspective of you touched on it before, it isn't just about sort of standalone, right? The technology that we're using has to be able to connect up on the digital thread and be connected to it. So for companies that are trying to look at this comprehensively, does CCAT provide resources for them to sort of evaluate not just the training they need, but what systems they might need to change in order to participate?
Yeah, sure. So, even though the Thread Lab, the lab that we're launching in January is really, kind of classroom training, we do have a laboratory there, and folks can reach out to our organization, to CCAT, and if they want, any of that particular software or particular things that they want training and skills for, we can actually come out and do custom projects with them or custom training if they want something other than kind of the standard curriculum that we're offering on site. And that's what we've always done, right? We have companies call us all the time and say, I need help with this tech problem. Can you help us? We explain whether we have the capabilities to do that. And then we also help to, we work closely with the state and try to make sure that they also know that, look, here's some funding from the state to help pay for the investment of the equipment. There's great funding from the state right now that's supporting manufacturing, and we help to connect them with the funding too that helps support that.
We'll train you. We'll tell you how it works. We'll give you a lab to test it, and we'll help you find money to pay for it. It's no surprise why everybody likes working with CCAT, right?
It's a great help and support system.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
And I know CCAT always has a booth at the ACM trade show, so always a great place to stop by and engage with the CCAT crew there as well. So, yeah. Amy, thank you so much for coming on and sharing it. We'll absolutely be looking at the digital thread training with excitement as that thing goes forward, and excited for you being on board with CCAT and looking to see everything that you do.
Great. Thank you so much. It was really exciting to get to meet you. I've been watching your podcast for so long, so it's really excited to be here and also to share this exciting project that starts in January.
Thanks a lot, Amy. Appreciate that.
Great. Thanks.
All right. I'm at the ACM trade show with Jim Reeser, president of Production Metals. Jim, thanks for talking to us today.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. It's your first time at the ACM trade show?
Second time.
Second time. What do you think of the show so far?
Nice. It's first time as a member. We got a great booth in the middle of the action, and it's busy already, so we're very excited.
Yeah, man. It's crazy the number of kids we're packing in here. A lot of people walking around seem super interested in what's going on.
Yeah, my human resource person is here for possible candidates.
There you go. There you go. Well, I was going to say, as a Cantor Tech grad, you got to be real supportive of all this stuff.
Absolutely.
Well, let's get into a little bit about Production Metals. Jim, introduce the audience. Kind of what is Production Metals? What do you guys do?
We're a full line metal distribution company, family owned, which is much different than the current business situation out there. Most companies are corporately owned,
Yep.
and we started this 5 years ago with
Which, by the way, that's another interesting, unique thing. Family owned and only 5 years old.
yes, yep. We started 5 years ago from a gentleman who worked for a large metal distributor that was bought by a large corporation, uh, and he just wanted to get back to family-owned customer service, and it's working. We started 5 years ago with 2 people and 53 as of yesterday,
Whew.
and we're growing.
Wow, 53 people in 5 years. What do you attribute that level of rapid growth? I mean, I don't think a lot of people would have thought, hey, a metal business in this day and age, because to your point, I think a lot of people look at that and go, hey, the market's sort of been cornered, corporate's in there, nationwide. What do you attribute the ability to kind of carve out a niche in the market and be so successful so quickly?
One is that we're the most competitive company out there. We don't answer to stockholders. Uh, Craig Yard dictates what the profit margin needs to be, not a boardroom. So it's made us very aggressive. We carry everything in New England that people need. And our service, we had most companies are anywhere from 30 to 50 years old in New England. And they have 20 to 30-year-old equipment. We have all brand new equipment. And it's all state of the art. We cut fantastic. We cut fast. In the metal industry, it's all about time.
Yeah.
And we have the fastest cutting saws, very, very precision. We just put a water jet and a laser in. So we've got all state of the art equipment that is quick and less expensive than the older equipment.
And the older stuff, be more competitive.
Yes.
Who are your key customers? Like, who do you guys serve?
The aerospace industry, as you can see, a lot of we do a bunch of defense work for subcontractors, and then there's the commercial machining, which is probably the bulk of what we do.
Really, even more than the so the
Well,
aerospace is strong and defense is strong, but commercials the bigger part.
Yeah, New England is, there's 10,000 machine shops throughout New England. So there's people making, I sell people who make sporting equipment all the way down to, again, jet engines. So it's, and, trying to think what else, medical industry.
Yeah.
We're just tapping into that, and the fuel cell industry is another thing that's just starting.
How long have you been in the industry?
I started in 1985.
So it's been a minute.
Yeah.
It's been a minute.
Yeah, I've gone through a couple companies that have gone out of business or were bought out.
Yeah.
That's just a natural progression of the metal industry.
Sure.
And that's what Craig Yard saw was the niche of everybody getting bought and consolidating, and said, hey, this is a good opportunity for us to start a brand new company.
Yeah, there you go. Where are you guys located?
Monroe, Connecticut.
Guys, one of the things we talk a lot about manufacturing, and clearly we've got a lot of kids walking around today, and you mentioned your HR person's here, recruiting such a big, important part of continuing to feed the growth that we're seeing in manufacturing and manufacturing support like production metals. How are you guys finding the ability to attract and retain, not just in such a competitive market, but in a small town?
It was very difficult, and then COVID hit, made it even more difficult.
Yeah.
In the past, I would say 14 to 16 months, we've gotten referrals from employees that work here who brought people in. That's probably been our best recruiting tool, is the employee themselves.
Yeah, and you guys work that sort of directly. It's just really interesting. You're in a market that you're kind of reinventing, kind of going from a market that I think people perceive as dominated by big boys and sort of coming in with a niche family business. And then you've grown it so fast in a small town. A 53 person employee business in Monroe is probably a pretty big business in town.
Absolutely. And again, we do have a employee referral program.
Okay.
So there's a monetary.
People get paid to
People
refer.
get paid once they're on for a year. It's basically $1,500 for every employee that they refer. So they're not going to get somebody who's not going to last.
Right.
Because they want to reap the rewards.
Sure.
And there are other metal distribution companies in Connecticut. They're all pretty much corporate owned. So we've gotten some attrition from people who have experience, who want to work for a very progressive company.
Nice. Very nice. What are the plans for Production Metals? I mean, you guys have grown so fast, so quickly. You know, as the president, what do you see as the future? What are your goals and ambitions for the company?
To be around 100 employees.
Okay.
We're going to probably double in sales, double in size, and that's probably where we'll settle at around 100 employees. That could handle all of New England, and we are stretching down into Pennsylvania. We're already out on Long Island, which is a brand new territory for us. But we want to stay in around the 100 employee mark, so it's manageable,
That's the goal. Drive it up to 100 employees
and then manage it.
and then just manage it, and then just manage it from there.
Yeah.
Well, listen, man, I wish you guys the best of luck. You guys have done a heck of a job in a short period of time.
Appreciate it.
It's a pleasure meeting you, Jim, and
Me too.
look forward to seeing you around the show. All right, man. See ya.
Made in America with Ari Santiago is brought to you by Compass MSP.
Thanks for listening and spending some time with me today. My goal is to help build a strong manufacturing community, and it would be impossible to do without all of you.